the biggest influence on white-tailed deer, I've always thought this, it's not pressure, it's not wind, it's your neighbors. I mean, it's pressure from people. That's the biggest thing. And I feel like if you can provide them, whether it's like 10 acres or 100 acres, if you can provide them a spot that is not getting messed with, you're only hunting it when the conditions are right. I just feel like your odds for success are so much higher. You give a deer a one small area where he's not getting messed with, at least down here. It's probably different in other parts of the states that have less hunting pressure. But, this is a great section, lots of nice bucks. But Saturday, November 3rd, there's going to be 25 bow hunters in this section. You can give them 10 acres and no one's going in, and no one's got their wind blowing into it. That's a big deal.
Welcome to the Habitat Podcast, the podcast for wildlife habitat management, hunting strategy, and land stewardship. And now, your host, Jared Van Hees.
Welcome to the Habitat Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Habitat Podcast. This week we have Jordan Browne from Michigan Outdoors Television breaking us down his brand new farm here in Michigan, talking about all the habitat projects he's doing right here in a high deer population area. Tune in. Guys, welcome to the Habitat Podcast. Special guest today, Mr. Jordan Browne, good friend of mine and Andy's from Michigan Outdoors is your occupation, right? So let's hear about you, where you're from, how you got into maybe what you're doing now, and then after that we'll get into the habitat and farm side of things.
Yeah, born and raised here in Michigan. I've been working for the show for, hard to believe, I'm on my 15th year at Michigan Outdoors. Started working for them in college and have been doing that ever since. For those people that don't know out there, we're a weekly show, airs on PBS, has been around in some capacity since the early 1950s. As far as I know, I think it really is one of the longest running outdoor shows in the entire country. I mean, we're looking at 75 years. Morton F., who started the show, was pioneer a lot of the outdoor, a lot of the sound production. He did initiated a lot of that, a lot of the early films. He was way ahead of his time and was applying that to the outdoor industry, which was kind of unique. So that's kind of where it all started, morphed into what it is today, 75 years later. Do a weekly show, 52 shows a year can be a little difficult, but here in Michigan, we have a lot to offer. So the show is not really about me or any of the other hosts. It's about sportsmen and women here in Michigan. So we're constantly highlighting different people week to week, which helps keep it kind of new and fresh. But following the seasons, trying to stay as timely as possible. Right now we're doing food plot stuff and summer fishing and whatever's going on. And, we get into September, then the lid kind of comes off because then there's waterfall, there's bear season, there's youth deer, there's, early antlerless, all the stuff kind of goes at once, bird seasons. It gets really busy. So that's what I do work-wise. Married with 3 kids. Love the outdoor stuff. Got 7, 4, and a newborn. So just starting to figure out the transition into really getting the kids outdoors and what that's going to look like. So got my 7-year-old daughter is with me a lot for a lot of the stuff, and she seems pretty into it. Just kind of letting it develop and see where it goes. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Very nice, very nice. And I can tell you, I don't miss your show. It's probably the only show that I watch every single week out of anything. And it's like when I was a kid, my dad would have it on Thursdays, so it's kind of cool. I know, there's not always whacking 160-inch deer on there, but it's like I've been to a lot of the spots that you go to and I learn new stuff every week. So I don't know, it's kind of like a tradition to watch your show,
Yeah, and I think that's what maybe differentiates us from a lot of other outdoor shows. Yeah, you watch it with your dad or your grandpa watched it, and it's there every week, and it's always a new show. I mean, occasionally there's a rerun segment or something, but for the most part, it's always a new show. And if you tune in Thursday nights to PBS, or if you record it or watch it on YouTube, it's there on Thursday nights too. It's always there, and like I said, we try to keep it as timely as possible. So if you're kind of curious what's going on in the Detroit River in the spring, you're most likely going to see some walleye fishing in April, May, and kind of get a good feel for what's going on down there. And that's kind of like our show is, I feel like it has morphed into today's culture pretty well. Now everybody wants it now, social media, they want to know what the bite was this morning. It's like, well, we can't quite do that, but we do utilize the social media channels to try to navigate that as well. But the content, if I film a segment with you, more than likely it's going to be on the next week's show or maybe 2 weeks. And so we're constantly kind of staying up with what's going on. And I think that helps in today's society where everybody wants, kind of that instant gratification. They want to see stuff right away. They want to know what's going on right now. That's kind of come right into what we already do. I don't know if we can do it any faster than we do it. I'm sure people would like it if it's faster. I don't know if that's possible, but doing a weekly show, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we meet Monday morning early, decide what's going to be on that week's show, who has what, how can we make, it ends up being 22 minutes of content. How can we make that work? And by Tuesday night, it has to be the PBS. So,
Wow.
And then it airs Thursday, and we're right on, and by the time it airs Thursday, I'm already out working on content for the next week's show. So it kind of is a never ending grind of capturing stuff here.
So how's the balance between home and being gone with you having such a young family?
Tricky. It's getting
I-
harder. Yeah. Thankfully, the Michigan out of doors stuff, it does require some overnight trips, but a lot of them are day trips. And
Okay.
as I've gotten older with kids, if I can make it a day trip, it's going to be a day trip. If I can get up at 4 to be there by, daybreak,
I
to
get
meet
that.
some waterfall hunters in the field. Maybe when I was 25, I'd go there the night before, grab a hotel, no big deal. But now I really like to sleep in my own bed when I can. I also own my own media company that requires me to be gone on top of the Michigan Out of Doors responsibilities. And those are sometimes longer trips. So I really try to, man, if there's any way I can make it work, I'll drive to Traverse City in the morning, shoot a segment and drive home, have 6 or 7 hours of drive time, and 8 hours of filming just to sleep in my own bed. So definitely tricky. But figure out how to make it. Honestly, it's always been a part of my life. I've always traveled. So I think even for my wife, she was with me basically, 15 years. She's been with me for the last 12 or 13. I'm probably getting that wrong. 14, 15, something like that. She's been with me pretty much the duration. So traveling's always been a part of what I do. And, one of those things that I feel like when I'm at home, I do miss the road. And when I'm on the road, I constantly miss home. So there's like this balance. I'm so used to traveling that I do miss it when I'm home a lot. But with the 3 little kids, you gotta be here and soak up those young years, because I can already start to see that things are changing a little bit with a 7-year-old. So trying to be here as much as I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think my wife told me this morning, as of today, we've been with each other for half of our lives. Like that was one thing when you're guessing 13, 14, 15 years, that's kind of how I am. Like, it's been like 20 years. I don't know. So if I'm the same way. I like to be home. If I like yesterday, I went to Southern Ohio for a trip. I was back, football practice, ready. Like I'm the same way. Hey, but you mentioned your own media company. First of all, do you do your own editing for the show for your segments that you're out there filming? And then what is your company?
Yeah. So the show is kind of a unique animal. So all of us really contribute to every facet of it. So we're all out there filming. We also all edit to some degree. I probably do a little bit more of the general editing for the show than anybody else. But then there's the whole advertising and sponsor world that's part of making the show run. So it's like the days where I'm in the field filming some walleye fishing, like that's the best part of the job, but there's also like half the job where I'm on a computer like everybody else, where I'm either editing or sending out invoices or working on social media, working on YouTube. It's a pretty good variety there. My own media company is similar. A lot of videography stuff. I produced a series for the Michigan Walleye Tour, big tournament series here. I produce all their videos. So same kind of thing. Show up there for the tournament weekend, kind of capture the whole tournament, produce a finished product for them. I've done quite a bit of conservation type work as well. Some stuff on the invasive carp that's kind of been Midwest to even down to like Tennessee and Kentucky. I've done some stuff down there. Done a few other projects for the National Wildlife Federation, like Great Lakes, or their Great Northwoods Initiative. Worked for the Great Lakes Business Network. Kind of done a variety there. I kind of pick and choose that stuff and really only work on projects that I'm passionate about or something that I think would be really cool or really fun, because I'm still working full time at another job. So it's like, how much extra can you really pile on? But yeah, that stuff's usually all fun stuff, and really enjoy doing that.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. So moving along to where we're at today, you're on your own property. Talk about how you got into land ownership and habitat. Walk us through not being a landowner to now where we're at today.
Long story short, you're really fortunate. Where we're sitting now, this property I've hunted since I was like 18 or 19, basically right out of high school. I've got to know the landowners, and it's a little bit funny, really. I got permission to shed hunt out here and did that for a couple of years. It's just incredible habitat. And so I remember the first year I asked him to bow hunt. And again, even 20 years ago, the bow hunting was not as popular. Like, no one was down here is going to let you gun hunt. That's never going to happen. It's a big part of the reason why I still don't really gun hunt today, because I grew up, I only had bow permission pretty much everywhere. When gun season comes, like, oh, I got 2 weeks off until they'll let me get back on there in December and try to shoot some does. But the first time I asked them, they told me no. At the very end of the conversation, he said, but don't be afraid to ask again. I said, okay, like 18 or 19 or whatever. I'm like, I'll see you next year, So I come back, shed hunt again. Then later that summer, knock on the door. Hey, I'm just double checking on the bow hunting thing. Any chance? And I don't think so. I don't think we have room, but check in next year. Roger that. We got it. So finally, the third year that I asked him, he said, yeah, I think it'd be okay if you bow hunt, but I'm going to kind of give you a section of the farm to bow hunt where nobody else does. Well, the section of the farm was the furthest or the most difficult to access, but the best habitat. So I'm just elated. I'm like, perfect. Yep. I'll go in there. No problem. So that kind of started my relationship with landowners, and hunted out here ever since, and got closer and closer with them. And we did kind of in the meantime, my wife and I bought about 15 acres north of here, and kind of that was the starting chunk. We were going to try to work on that, and we did do some habitat stuff out there, and thought about building there at one point. And as we were kind of figuring out if we were going to try to flip that and buy something bigger, we were content with that. The landowners here where I've hunted forever, they kind of approached me about buying part of the farm. And originally when they approached me with the idea, it's like, well, yeah, that sounds great, but there's no way this is going to work. And long story short, they basically made it so it was going to work for us. So we got really fortunate there. And the husband had passed away a few years ago, and once the wife had it, she was, I think, concerned with what was going to happen to the property more than anything. And they didn't have financial constraints really, and they just didn't want to see it get sold to the highest bidder or get developed or a solar farm or Lord knows what. So they split up the farm, sold half of it to the neighbors, half of it to us. So
okay.
How we ended up here.
How big is your farm?
About 220 acres.
Okay.
So yeah, nice. Like I said, no other way to put it than we got really fortunate, and long relationship with them. And at the end of the day, they cared about who had it, and they knew exactly what I'd do with it if I got it someday, and that we'd take care of it. And she's my neighbor, so we just built here on this property. She lives right next door. I'm up there, I don't even want to guess, 3 times a week. My wife says she's the other woman. I'm up there all the time, mowing the yard, doing stuff for her. We're all really close, so it's awesome. Worked out great. Yep.
Yeah, man. That when you showed me that and told me about this at our bow camp last fall, I was just smiling for you. I'm like, dude, that's that. And I've seen some of your footage and stuff on the shows, and you're blessed. Tell us how that farm lays out. Try to paint a picture. If we're looking at an aerial map, what are we looking at?
So it's very long. It's actually it's a mile deep, so it's much deeper than it is wide. The front half is mostly ag. The back half is mostly creek bottom. So there is some small kind of fields in the back half, but it's almost like 100 acres of ag up front, not quite, a little less than, and then everything in the back is just great deer habitat. The best way to describe it, there's a big creek that goes through there, tributary of the Grand, that holds a ton of deer. Also get a few salmon, few steelhead in there. Got enough, couple of holes big enough for the kids to swim in. We go down and do that all the time. So a couple big ravines, kind of some unique. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this part of the state. Ionia County does have quite a bit of big ravines, which is a little bit unique. So you get some of these like almost, I don't even know what state would compare, what you could compare it with, but these big bluffs that are, you drop 100 feet down to the creek bottom, there you sit up there and it's just like the views are incredible. And so we have a few of those on the property that are really cool, and creek bottoms thick, and it's just perfect deer habitat. It's part of the reason we have a tough time with the antlerless harvest here. It's like you shoot a bunch of does and within a month they just fill in from everywhere else because the habitat's there. There's just nothing you can do.
Wow. Okay. So that sounds amazing. Now how many deer do you think you have per square mile, if you had to guess? And again, we're not biologists here, but you've been around the state. You know which spots are full of deer and which are less. I mean, you're probably in one of the higher pockets.
Yeah, I mean, the section that we're in is actually a 2 mile by 1 mile section, so it's a little bit bigger. That creek bottom literally runs the entire middle of the section. There's never less than 250 deer in this section. Never.
Wow.
In the winter, there could be 400. I mean, I could drive around tonight and a couple of the bean field. I mean, I could probably glass up tonight. If I went around the whole section, I'd probably glass 150. That's what I'm seeing any of the habitat, any of the creek bottom. It's just the open fields. It's just perfect habitat. I mean, envision a big creek bottom that runs 2 miles. That's windy and perfect with these big bluffs with all ag on both sides. I mean, it's just a perfect setup for deer. Like I said, it's a difficult problem because we really work on the antlerless harvest, and it almost just feels like nothing you can do. I mean, the farmers, especially around here, they shoot a ton of does in the summer, get block permits, and it's like I think last year, a farmer to the south of me shot like 77. Just that one farmer. You wouldn't even know it. I mean,
really?
by the time shed season rolled around, there's 300 deer in the creek bottom, and they just kind of populate from other areas. We definitely are in some of the more high density stuff that I've seen, traveling around the state. There's some other pockets that got a lot of deer too, but Ionia County, Montcalm County, very high deer densities.
Yeah, and like you said, your habitat, once all the crops come off and all the hunting pressure hits in November, they suck into you. You're the best in the area. So how are you? How are your farmers? How are the crops? Like, are they still maintaining that even after shooting 70 something deer?
Yeah, I mean, the crops hold on, I think, just because of the abundance. There's a lot of ag around here. So even though there is a lot of deer, I mean, you can basically guarantee that everything within 50 yards of a wood line is nothing. And if you got some small hidden fields somewhere, might as well be a food plot, it's done.
Yeah.
But these, we got big open fields on the exterior, and there is some pretty good soil. So I think they manage just because there's a lot of it. If there was less farm ground around, probably be a bigger deal. But I mean, I shouldn't speak as a farmer because I'm sure they say there's too many all the time. I'm sure,
Sure.
they always want there to be less, but most of the hunters around here make a pretty strong effort to try to shoot some does. And like I said, I try to keep up with it. Maybe it's working. It's hard to tell. We've been doing it for so long, trying to shoot so many that, I mean, maybe there'd be double the deer if we weren't, but it feels like sometimes you're just like, I can't make a dent in them.
Well, how much of your land there is in ag compared to habitat?
So we had about 95 acres in ag when we bought the place. I have since converted 16 acres over to CRP.
Okay. And is that in the program?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. What's interesting, and I'll get back to that CRP. My friend Corey and I think you met Corey at the deer camp. And some of his buddies, he's on a lease where there's 500 acres, I think. And him mostly, but I've helped have shot 50 to 70 deer a year for like 3 or 4 years down there. And he's actually seeing a difference, so maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel, Jordan, is all I'm saying. But there was a difference.
What I will say about our area, and this might be pretty unique to just our section, minus there's one chunk in our section that really hurts us from a buck standpoint. The rest of the section, for the most part, is they're pretty good. We have a fairly good ratio of buck to does. We just have a ton of deer. I mean, a lot of times I'm going out, especially like pre-rut, you go out in late October, I'm going to see more bucks than does most of the time. There's a lot of young bucks, but I'm going to see more bucks than does. The ratio is good. There's just so many deer. So I don't feel like, I know some areas of the state where you're seeing like 20, 30 does for every, every buck. It's not like that. We just have a ton of deer. The ratios are decent though. And we have a decent age structure. We've shot some nice bucks the last few years. So it's no complaints about deer hunting at all. But man, yeah, it's like, I don't know how many more does you can shoot. So I think we're at max capacity for what we can do.
Okay, well, yeah,
Okay.
that's not a bad thing then. So did the deer population kind of help drive the CRP or the habitat projects that you have done? Or let's hear more about why you chose the CRP and what program that is and how you implemented that. I think I remember seeing some videos on it, but
Yeah, I would say deer hunting was a small part of the decision.
okay.
Um, Really, the fields that I took out of ag and put into CRP were very poor soil for farming. It should have never been farmed. It was one of those things 20 years ago that they were like, "Hey, how close can we get to the creek and still farm?" Or how close can we get to this bluff? So I think when I was, envisioning what that could look like, I just thought that it never should have been farmed in the first place. And if there was a program that would help facilitate getting this back to something more native, more natural, that I would like that. Obviously, the deer is a benefit. There's also, again, people not familiar with Ionia County, there is no grass. I mean, there is no grass. Everything is farmed. There's hardly, I mean, there's some fence rows, but there's not very many fence rows. There's no just leftover grass. There's very few stands of CRP. So I thought it is kind of I guess, a win both ways. I could put it into something that I would enjoy more, that my kids would enjoy more, that we would use more than a farm field. And also, I'd create this unique piece of habitat for the area. Now, 16 acres is not some giant chunk. I'm not expecting to have a whole bunch of pheasants running around here next year or anything. But that 16 acres of grass, native trees, were in the monarch and pheasant. What is it? Monarch and pheasant. Can't remember the actual name of the program. Monarch something. Where we have some trees, a lot of native grasses, and some switchgrass. That will be very unique to the area. And I was just kind of curious to see, from a deer hunting standpoint, would that make a big impact? We've already got great cover. I don't really need the grass to be cover for the deer. I more looked at it like a unique opportunity to have some habitat that they won't find elsewhere. And maybe that'd be the difference on a certain buck. Maybe he'd prefer to be in the grass or prefer to have that as part of his daily routine where, I mean, just trying to think around our section. I mean, you can't find 2 acres of grass probably within 10 miles a year, unless it's somebody's yard. I mean, that's about as much as you're going to get. So I think that was the bigger thing for me. It's like I can take it out of ag, and the way the CRP program works, poor soils are prioritized, and it's close to water. So our rental rate to go to CRP was more than we were getting from the farmer. So it's like I'm looking at it from the outside, like I'd rather have it grass and trees. I could actually make more money at the time being to take these two little fields out. They should have never been farmed anyway. Just kind of checked all the boxes. So, and it's kind of like the one field goes around our deer camp and stuff. And not that there's anything wrong with farmers spraying and doing their thing, but and they come by with a boom sprayer and they're spraying 20 feet from your deer camp. You're like, don't love it. So I kind of all those factored into the decision, but deer hunting was only a small part of that component.
Well, I think what keeps ringing in my head while you're talking is just diversity, right? You're adding diversity to your parcel, and that's going to be a win for all the species.
Yeah.
So, hats off to you for doing that. What were the requirements? Just have to be in ag for a certain amount of years?
Yeah, so it had to have been, I can't remember what the number of years were, but it had to have been farmed within the last 2 years. There's a land ownership piece. I think you had to own it for 2 years before you could apply. And then the program really prioritizes the water health. And I didn't really know this going into it, but the big emphasis is like trying to stop some of the erosion and try to
Erosion.
stop what gets into the water, or we're right on a creek. And I also found out through this process, our property is actually also the direct wellhead for the closest town. So our groundwater is draining to the closest town as well. So we're like high priority for CRP. So that made getting into the program and all that pretty easy. And I think the more I learned about that, the more I was happy that I did it, just from a buffer. Again, like I was telling you, it's like when they did it 20, 30 years ago, it was like, how close can we get to the water and still farm? That some of that is making it into that creek. That creek is also a tributary of the Grand. Grand runs into Lake Michigan. I'm just one landowner. I'm not saying it's making a huge difference, but it's like, hey, I think this benefits me anyway. And if I can help stop some of this, why would I not?
Perfect. So how did
Ended
you
up
do
being
it?
a lot of
Go ahead.
work. Yeah, so
Yeah,
it ended up
that's my
being a
next
lot of
question.
work. Yeah. Definitely was not the year to try to do a big CRP project. I'll say that. Just with the working on the house and work and 3 little kids, our youngest is only 7 months old, so it was a bad year to do it. But we started with trees. We did about 1,300, mostly Norway spruce, some white pines, and some white oak. I picked Norways basically just because they handle deer better, and that was something we had to be sensitive with. We can cage every tree, so it's like the whites that survived the summer this year. I plan on caging because I don't think they'll make it through the winter. So any of the whites that I think I planted 150 whites, any of those that make it through the summer, I'll cage, and then white oaks more just because it's very natural landscape. We got a lot of white oaks here, and so I worked some of those in. So we did that in late April, planted all those trees, and kind of when we did that, started like making a rough map. So the program has very loose guidelines on how you do this. It's like you can have 10 to 20% trees, you can have up to 20% switchgrass, you can have 10% food plot, and basically the rest has to be a native grass mix. So we kind of played around with like the design, the shape, like where would we prefer there to be a few more trees, maybe a little more cover. Like we had one south-facing hillside that I worked on trees in there, looking at a potential bedding area, but with big spacing. So instead of doing trees like every 10 or 12 feet, like a Christmas tree farm style, I was doing rows like 15 feet apart, trees like 20 or 25 feet apart. Because I'm not going in there to cut trees in 20 years. I just want it strictly for habitat. So I tried to think through some of that as we were kind of designing the plan. And once we got all the trees in, we came back mid-May, I think it was May 15th, with a drill, and then we drilled in all the native grasses, drilled in all the switchgrass, put in fire breaks, because you do have to, as part of the program, the native grass, you have to either burn or disc after 5 years. So we kind of made some plans for that, of how that might look. The biggest field we wanted to be able to burn, so we built in some fire breaks around the trees and stuff to make sure we weren't going to have issues. But and now I'm in the process of mowing. Actually, that's what I've been doing the last week or so. You got to get out there and mow it a couple times that first year for weed control. So it was a lot. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a lot when you got other stuff going on, but it was fun.
This podcast is brought to you by Latitude Outdoors. Guys, Latitude Outdoors is one of the top saddle hunting manufacturing companies in the world, here headquartered in Michigan. Guys, I've worked with Kevin, Alex, the guys over there at Latitude. I've been using their products for over 3 seasons here at Habitat Podcast. The first deer I shot was that first big buck on the 15 acres out of my Method 2 saddle. That buck, I shot him out of the saddle using the climbing sticks, the platform, everything to get up, and that saddle is just very versatile when selecting a tree. It's the first time I hunted that tree on the 15 acres. I climbed up that day and was able to make the shot and a follow-up shot on that buck in that saddle. Guys, the saddle is so easy to use. You literally strap it on like a seat belt, like a belt. It's all ropes. There's no metal components. There's no chinging and banging and clunking. I wrap it around, I step into it, I cinch it down, and I'm on my way out. I also use their carbon Speed Series climbing sticks. I got those brand new this year. I've been using those all over bow hunting and gun hunting, from public land to private. Very lightweight, easy to carry, stackable sticks. I ended up putting cell strips on mine and using daisy chains. They compact very well, hang out of the bottom of my pack. And when I'm wearing the Method 2 saddle, I can easily pick any tree in the woods and hunt. Guys, if you're looking for a way to outfit your property without spending $200 per stand, like I'm gonna do on the new 40, I'm gonna prep a bunch of saddle trees and keep the deer guessing on where I'm sitting. They will not know my true stand location because I will not have one. Guys, saddles are very versatile. I urge you to check them out. Latitude Outdoors. Again, I've been using them for years, and they are great products. Latitude Outdoors, thank you for supporting the Habitat Podcast.
Have you ever been in a hurry to get a bunch of expensive seed down and not know exactly how much to put down? Or you get it down and you run out before you're halfway across the field? I have, and I'm done with it. I'm now using the Downburst Seeder DS860 drop seeder. Guys, I've been using the 860 now for 2 years, and this thing is bad to the bone. All aluminum, handcrafted here in Northern Michigan. I will be planting switchgrass with mine. Doug and I were talking today about, prepping the ground for switchgrass, getting it on. Switchgrass is like $180 for 10 pounds. That's pretty expensive seed. I'm not just gonna willy-nilly throw it out there. So my downburst behind my ATV or tractor or side-by-side will be exact, 99% accurate with this seeder for any sort of expensive seeds. You can run any of our Vitalize mixes through there. You can run expensive seeds like alfalfa, clover, brassicas, and get exact rates. Don't end up with golf ball sized turnips anymore. Get the correct rate down and don't waste your money by wasting seed. Downburst DS860 drop seeder, brand new code, HP100 at checkout. HP100, $100 off a Downburst seeder. Check them out at downburstseeders.com.
I can imagine that. I only did 100 Norways this year, and you did, what'd you say, 1,300, 1,200, something like that?
1,300 trees total, probably about 1,000 Norways.
Okay. How did you plant those?
An old tree planter, the old spade in front with the wheels behind, and I planted every tree, bent over one at a time. We've done a couple other CRP projects with our family, so I've planted a lot of pine trees over the years. This planter's got to be from like the 50s, but it works great. Just breaks you a nice hole. You got about a second to get the tree in, then close it right up behind you. And then we always have helpers out there just walking behind to straighten up trees and mainly looking for J roots, making sure that you don't have something sticking up. And, I would say I was just back there when I was mowing, kind of trying to get a good count on the trees. I would guess that I'd say we're pretty close to 90% survival rate as of now. We'll see what happens. It's been really warm lately and it's been kind of dry here. So kind of like the last crucial step. When we planted trees, at least it's always like first month, obviously big one. If you get through that first month, you've got a lot better chance. But when you plant them in April, it's like, okay, you always get a little bit of rain in April and May, but then you got to get through that June, July, when it first gets hot. Can you get some rain in there? And we got that. But now we're at the 90-degree days. It's like, can we survive the next few weeks? If we get through there, we should be okay. So,
yep. Same situation up north here.
Yep.
So Jordan, that all sounds like amazing. I can picture it like creek bottom, CRP, ag, right? Like it's perfect. Where do you plan on hunting for some of this with the kids, with you? Are you doing food plots as well, or just focusing on the ag because there's so many deer? Or what's next?
So I've had about 3 acres of food plots that are all already planted, actually, slightly ahead of the game on some of that.
Nice.
So within the CRP plan, like I said, there's a 10% allowance for food plots. So they won't pay for your seed, but they'll still pay you your price per acre. So I had about 1.67 acres within the body of the CRP that I could do. So I did 2 different food plots. I've kind of been setting things up, and it's funny because I don't really gun hunt at all, but for some good gun spots, mainly for kids. And I have, like, my grandpa who hunted with me last year. He's 89. Having some spots that people can easily access. So whether it's for viewing or for gun hunting or whatever. My wife, she likes to hunt, but we have 3 kids. Like, she might only be able to get out 2 or 3 times a year. Like, I want to have a spot for her to feel like she has a good chance at success. So definitely working in some food plots. We've got, got 3 Brassica kind of blends and then 1 big clover plot is how it's broken out this year. And for the first time, and you guys would know a lot more about this than me, but I've worked in some clover mixes into my Brassica mix. I've heard a lot of guys talking about that just to give some extra coverage and give you some spring food coming in. And then you can, if you want to do Brassicas again next year, till it in or whatever you want to do. Also put fertilizer on my food plots this year for the first time. Limed before, but I've never actually okay, what kind of fertilizer I need? How much should I actually put on? Especially with the bigger ones that were part of like the clover one that was a big one in the CRP mix. I'm like, I want to get this thing off on the right foot. I'd rather spend a little money now and have it just be an established plot that I don't have to worry about as much going forward. So paid a little more attention to that. But as far as layout, I don't know. It might sound bad, but I really trying to steer the deer towards the center of my property. Just to keep them. I mean, most of our neighbors here are great, and if they shoot the big buck in a section, I'm going to be not just as happy as I'd be if I killed it, but I'm gonna be happy for them. I don't have
Yep.
I don't have any problem with them shooting it. But the way I've kind of geared it and the way the property lays out, when you're thinking about a primarily west or southwest wind, kind of the design works perfect to try to keep the deer in the middle and makes my access a lot better. So as we've slowly been working on more stuff since we've actually owned it, that's always kind of been the goal, is like, how do I keep more deer towards the center? And even the way the food plots are laid out within the CRP, they're kind of on the edges as maybe like a last stop. Maybe I can keep that buck that comes out of the creek bottom or is in the grass. Maybe he spends his time in that food plot and he doesn't go out to the ag field until after dark. Little things like that where, or maybe it's not even a buck I'm trying to kill. Maybe it's just a 2.5 that I don't want to take a step out into the ag field and flip a coin. So, so there's definitely been some thought into that part of it. Access is so huge. I mean, you guys know it's like the biggest influence on white-tailed deer. I've always thought this. It's not pressure. It's not wind. It's your neighbors. I mean, it's pressure from people. That's the biggest thing. And I feel like if you can provide them, whether it's like 10 acres or 100 acres, if you can provide them a spot that is not getting messed with, you're only hunting it when the conditions are right, I just feel like your odds for success are so much higher. And you give a deer a one small area where he's not getting messed with, at least down here. It's probably different in other parts of the states that have less hunting pressure. But this is a great section, lots of deer, lots of nice bucks. But Saturday, November 3rd, there's gonna be 25 bow hunters in this section. You can give them 10 acres and no one's going in, and no one's got their wind blowing into it. That's a big deal. And so we've really tried to prioritize a few spots on the property. It's like, well, no matter what, I'm not giving this spot up. I'm not going to hunt with my wind blowing into this bedding area. It will not happen. I'll sit on my hands, or I'll go sit on the fence row, or, there's a couple spots where we really made that a big point of emphasis.
That's so huge. I've said the same thing. I'm just over here nodding my head. Like, don't let your wind go in there. Don't let your boot scent go in there. Anything. You have to give some of your property to the deer in areas where we all hunt. I couldn't agree more, man. And you have the room to do it, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it is different because if you only got 10 or 15 acres, I hunted small parcels my whole life growing up. Sometimes you just don't have a choice. You're like, I'm going to go sit in the middle of the bedding area every time because it's all I got. But if you have sometimes it's not very big. There's a buck a couple of years ago. You and I were texting about, I think 2 years ago, we called him Forky. I'm not real big on naming deer, by the way. That someone in the family always gives them a name. So like, we got a buck out back. The kids are calling crisscross applesauce. I'm sure it'll stick, but they had named this one Forky, or somebody named it Forky. Man, he was in like 2 acres. I had a couple cameras I put in there. I'll go in and put a few cell cams in these bedding areas, and like first week of September, sneak in there. Sometimes I start to get weird in September. I'll even get weird about what I'm doing that time of year, even if the buck, I don't even think he's there yet. But so I'll go in and throw a few in these bedding areas, and that buck was like 2 cameras, about 150 yards apart, no other cameras on the whole farm. And I was getting daylight pictures of him. And he was a 4.5-year-old buck, and he was so comfortable in there, and it was such a small area. It was the only spot I'd seen him. Actually, it was the only spot I saw him the year before, too, for what it's worth. And that's where I ended up killing him. And so that's an example of, like, even if you only have 15 acres, if there's a 2 or 3 acre chunk that you can set aside, it could be enough. This buck was living in a really, really small spot.
Yeah, I'd agree. And especially if those 2 acres are maybe heavily timbered or thick marsh or something like that, right? Where he feels secure. I had a question on those cameras you snuck in there and put in the bedding areas. Run me by exactly like where you're putting those. I don't need the GPS coordinates, but like how,
I'll take those.
Are you on a scrape? Are you next to his bed? Are you in a train? Like, I'm just thinking about, how do you know where to put them in the bedding area? What are you focusing on?
A little bit of both. So normally, like, and I just using our property as an example, that there's 2 of those spots that I would call like sanctuaries, for lack of a better term. And I'm always going to set up a mock scrape or 2, either in there or on the exterior. Almost, if I can find a good spot on the exterior, I almost prefer that. They love edges. They love scent checking bedding areas. I feel like a lot of times I have better luck with getting pictures on the edge of a bedding area than I do like in the middle of it. Because again, in the middle, you're kind of guessing a little bit, right? Unless you make a mock scrape or something to really put them in a spot. So I always do one on a scrape. And I'll usually look for, and some of it's historical. I've been doing this for a long time out here. I'm here for almost 20 years. So you kind of
Sure.
learn, okay, these camera spots are a little better. But a lot of times I'll look for, is there a pinch within the bedding area? So if you've got a couple acres that's bedding area, maybe there's one spot where it kind of condenses down that would funnel them a little bit, but keep them inside that bedding area. I'd like to put a camera there if I can. So like I said, it kind of depends. Always a mock scrape, and usually one that's like really within the bedding area, and those are left up all year. I never go get them. You put them on there, and if I can get a solar panel or an extra battery pack in there, I will. If not, honestly, by the time you put it up in September, as long as it gets me into last week October, that's all I really care about. Because at that point, once you get to last week October, all bets are off. Things are changing. New bucks are moving in. Like your philosophy is changing. Your strategies are changing. So I'm really looking for that for like the first couple weeks of October, when that buck could be killable in a small area and be consistent. He's coming in there a lot. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I run a lot of cameras. I mean, I like to run a lot on the edges too. I'm a little bit old school. I don't do all wireless. I still like some regular cameras. I like some cameras with like good video. So I always put out some, like we've got 2 or 3 in the creek bottom right now, and like creek crossing spots. And then I'll run a bunch. So we have a couple big fence rows. I'll run a bunch of cameras on the fence rows, and really 2 reasons. Inventory for one, like just get an idea what bucks are there, when they're hitting a scrape. And you can learn a lot about when they're at those spots. You get a buck on a fence row 20 minutes after, or 20 minutes before it gets dark or whatever. What direction did he come from? You could start piecing the puzzle, and you can check those cameras all the time. That you can put up 20 of them if you wanted. You can drive your truck down, check them as you go. You're not going into their bedding area. You're not messing up their routine, but maybe it tells you, hey, this night this buck was coming from the west. He must have been using this bedding area, and you could start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So I've kind of always done that. I don't have a lot of cameras that I put in spots I'm going to hunt. Like I said, I'll put a few in those bedding areas, but again, I'm never going in there again. So it's not like I'm going in there to check the camera or whatever, but I'll put a bunch in spots that are easy to check.
I like that.
Love it.
How are you making your mock scrapes?
I guess I'm again a little bit old school. I don't do anything too crazy, if I'm being honest. Conquest makes that little looks like a deer paw on one side and like a claw on the other.
Oh.
I never use the deer paw, but I'll scrape it out with that. I don't know how real that is, if that's supposed to be there, but I'm like, yeah, I've never put a paw in it, but I'll scrape it out with that. And I have started using the ropes the last couple of years. And I've seen pretty good luck with those. Before, I would just kind of basically break a branch where I needed it to be and set it up and just kind of go old school. I don't go too crazy. I'm not not big on putting a bunch of scents in a mock scrape. I think, I kind of learned this when I was younger, hunting smaller chunks where we would put like a 1/4 acre food plot. And people would be like, oh, the food plot's not growing that great. I'm like, the food plot is not for the food. It's just to give this buck a spot to make a scrape. They need those areas, and they love the visual of a scrape. I've seen bucks look up 50 yards away and visually see a scrape and just start beelining towards it. Obviously once you get one established, you get some scent there. That's all good. It's all positive. But a lot of it for me is like just creating a good visual for them to come in, let the deer get it started, let them put the scent there and get it going.
Okay. Are you a pee in a scrape or non-pee in a scrape guy?
I can't say I've never done it, but no, I'm not a pee in a scrape guy, but no, generally no.
Okay. All right.
So you've been to a lot of places all over the state. Is there some sort of habitat improvement that you've seen over and over again that you're like, all right, this is going to be a good hunt before you even get there? And then do you have any memorable hunt, maybe one memorable hunt that worked to kind of how you predicted it would go, or maybe the landowner whom you were filming predicted it would go? I know it's kind of a question. You got to think through a lot of data right there. Out of all the hunts you've been on up for 15 years, but
yeah, boy, I'm trying to think. Let me start with the first part. Okay, so if there's one type of habitat, I'll say no, and I'll say this because Michigan is such a diverse state. Southern Michigan, like down here where we're at, looks basically like Iowa. Northern, my property is full of cedars and all the stuff. Northern Michigan looks like Wisconsin. It's like a whole other animal. And then the UP is basically Canada. So there's no like one size fits all as far as habitat goes. Like, yeah, I get, I grew up hunting near water, and I still like see a swamp and get excited. I don't know, I even have a swamp out here, but like if I'm up in the UP and we're doing a bobcat hunt and I'm walking along the edge of the swamp, I'm thinking like, dang, I'm going to come back up here and deer hunt this. This looks sweet. Might be horrible, but like, visually it's like, oh yeah, there's a big swamp here. I'm going to hunt, oh, it's got the cedars, it's probably a better bear spot than it is deer. But in my head, I'm like, oh, it looks awesome. So I think for Michigan, there's no one size fits all. I think a lot of it is your neighbors when you're in Southern Michigan. I think habitat's important. But like if you're not in an area with good management, you're just not going to consistently kill big deer. That's just all there is to it. They're too hard to figure out. And if you only got one big buck every year in your section, again, down here where you got a ton of people hunting, it's just tough to do. And then, Northern Michigan, a different animal in that aspect where you got a lot of public property that's, can be kind of a free for all, but you got a lot of room. So then there's a lot of areas you can hunt, and you can get away from people easier than you can down here when you're kind of confined by all private. And yeah, so I don't have a good answer for the habitat one, I guess. It kind of depends on what part of the state you're in. Yeah, that would be my answer there.
All right, follow up on that then before the hunt one. Give you a minute to think about the hunts more. What about like stem density? Even though it could be different type of habitat, the thickness of a certain area, do you see that in common good areas?
Yeah, I think you could definitely relate that. I mean, that the first thing I thought about when you said that was we just wrapped up a segment up in the UP on wolves. We're talking about some of the issues going on with the deer population in the UP. A lot of what's going on in the UP, I tread lightly here. Wolves are definitely a part of the problem, probably a pretty big piece of the problem, but they have had such a big habitat change over the last 50 years. We have a lot of this old growth. There's not a lot of in the UP, you're talking about almost all browse. There's no ag, other than bait piles. That's the only ag you're going to find in most of these spots. So, there, I think if you get a spot that's had a recent cutting, and really that's what I think, and I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole because I don't want to speak out of turn here, but, in the UP in its glory days, it's because half the UP was logged, and they had all this new growth and all this new stuff. And up there, when you have no ag, that's the primary food source is browse. And now we haven't had as much of that, coupled with more snowfalls. It kind of, piles up on them. But yeah, I would say, down here, we don't get a lot of it, honestly. You don't get a lot of areas that have that density because, all your primary species are getting just eaten as soon as they come up. The only thing that grows down here is autumn olives, basically. All the other new growth, it's really tough to get going because the deer populations are so high. And yeah, I would say that that density, that stands for Northern Michigan as well, in my experience. I think anytime you're in that kind of park syndrome where you got nothing but mature trees and it's all open, other than the fact that it looks beautiful, doesn't seem like it provides a lot for you.
Preach it, brother Jordan. Preach it. Love it, man. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, how about a good memorable hunt where you saw some effective habitat manipulation or something you liked about the hunt, where you could tell this is sweet habitat?
Still trying to generate that. Man, there's been a lot of different hunts over the years.
All right, well, we can come back to that one. I do want to say though that if people are interested of your CRP, I meant to say this earlier, you did put segments on in I think May, and even earlier than that of you implementing the CRP program we covered earlier in the episode. But that can all be seen there online as well. How about, you mentioned baiting? What's your barometer on will people be able to bait again in Michigan this fall?
My barometer, I don't care. I think if I saw some more valid evidence on the disease portion of it, I would maybe be swayed a little bit more. I've never hunted over bait. Primarily a Southern Michigan hunter with lots of ag. It's just never been a big part of what I do. I'm sitting here on my deck. I'd love to be able to have a feeder out of my back deck so I could watch deer. Like I'd love to be able to just feed them in the winter or whatever. Um, I don't, I know that I've hunted enough spots in the state. I know that it is very beneficial in certain areas, and I'm not naive to that. I also know we have a declining hunter population. And I think that if there's not sound evidence to say that we shouldn't do this, and if it is limiting people, I don't know that it is for sure, but if it is limiting people from being successful in the woods, I'm kind of, again, I mean, I'm down here spending thousands of dollars on food plots that are essentially doing the same general thing and not such a condensed area. So for me, if you were to ask me like, hey, you get to make the decision, I'd say probably open it up. Um, I don't think they will, and I don't think it's likely to happen anytime soon. That's my general feel from folks.
Interesting.
How do
Even
you get?
if they add a bait stamp or a bait license to generate more money.
It seems too messy. I mean,
Yeah.
they keep talking about this idea, and it's just like there'd have to be a cleaner. It'd have to be a little cleaner. You can't say, hey, we're not going to allow baiting because we're worried about CWD, but if you give us $10, we will.
I agree.
It's just the messaging's too mixed. So you got to go one way or another. You got to say, hey, we've changed our mind. We don't think it has a significant impact. Disease transmission, you can now buy a baiting license for $10 or whatever. But even that, I'm kind of like, outside of just a pure money grab, I'm like, just make our licenses more. They're gonna get me down the rabbit hole. We work with the DNR a lot and the NRC. Very familiar with a lot of the things that go on there. They have an extremely difficult job. The DNR is not properly funded. Some of that on their own decisions. Some of that because license fees are the same as they've been since 2014, and everything else is 10 times more than it was in 2014. It's just messy, but the baiting thing, it kind of adds to it. So if you're asking me, open it up.
Very well said.
All right.
How do you guys feel about baiting?
Andy, go ahead.
I grew up as a bait hunter. I mean, I grew up here in northern Michigan where you had your blind and your bait pile was, 30 to 50 to 100 yards in front of you, and you went and sat and you watched that bait pile. So I grew up that way, but I also didn't start shooting nice deer until I wasn't baiting. So I'm kind of, torn, but also for the kids. I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and my 9-year-old's ready to hunt. Well, it'd be nice for him to have a bait pile at like 30 yards so he could, just for that aspect of it. That's kind of my take on it. I could take it or leave it.
Yeah. It's not going to change what I do, but I think if it helps somebody else, it's not a big enough problem for me to really care one way or another.
I do like it for late season for sure. Definitely like it for late season.
I'm curious on that. The way I feel about it, if all so I have 40 acres and there's some parcels around it. If all of them are baiting and I'm not, I feel like I might be at a disadvantage there. I want my parcel to have everything the neighbors do and more times 10.
Right.
I don't want to deal with it. I haven't missed it. But then again, like way up north where it starts to snowing, 2 foot of snow in November and everything else, like I think it could be super effective, like up at the northern 70 maybe. So like I don't know that it would be. I don't think mature deer in Michigan or crazy deer are going to come in to bait down here as much, but like up there, I don't know. I don't know if that was. So Jordan, when you mentioned earlier, it's effective in some areas of the state. Are you talking north?
Yeah. I mean, again, down here we have such a high amount of agriculture, but also great natural browse. I mean, we just get a ton of browse down here. Northern Michigan and the UP, which of course you can bait in the UP, but Northern Michigan doesn't always have that luxury. And yeah, you could maybe make an argument that that's, because of some of the decisions made by the DNR and some of the forestry decisions, maybe there should be more. But I just think that it's just not a big enough issue. I feel like it's the NRC and the DNR have just made this too big of a thing. I just feel like it should have been a little more cut and dry, or there should have been, everything else they do these periods, and then there's a sunset, and there's just, can we get a recap on what's going? I mean, give us some more information. I don't know. I've never killed a deer over bait. I've never killed a buck in a food plot. That matter. It's not really how I hunt. So to me, it's like yeah, I'd love to have a feeder so I could watch them from my deck, and I don't really care if anybody else is doing it. But it's not going to change how I do things, whether I can have a 500-pound bait pile or 10-gallon bait pile or whatever. They're going to, I'm going to hunt the way that I always have, and that doesn't really necessarily revolve around food. I shouldn't say that. doesn't necessarily revolve in me shooting them at the food.
Okay. And you've been doing well with how you've been doing it, so I would also recommend not changing. So. Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. I have the rapid fire segment brought to you by Latitude Outdoors. If you are ready for it.
Shoot.
All right. Favorite beverage at deer camp?
It's going to sound bad, but probably coffee.
Okay.
Coffee, then whiskey.
All right. It's a must have. I have to have coffee at deer camp.
Mm-hmm.
You've been to a lot of different places and had a lot of good meals with wild game over the years. What's your favorite wild game meal?
Tough question. I'm a little bit spoiled because we do the recipes with Jim Wood, and he's made I've had amazing woodcock. I've had deep fried whole bluegill that's been amazing.
Wow.
I would say, all right, the best one I've ever had was when I did a segment I did with my buddy. We were mushroom hunting, and he brought some duck breast that we had killed in December season, and we did fresh morel mushrooms and duck breast in a cast iron pan with a brandy cream sauce. And we did it in the middle of the woods, built a fire, the whole experience, the whole thing. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
I remember that. Yes, it was. What bow do you shoot?
I'm currently shooting a prime. I am exploring a few other options, but I am currently shooting prime and have shot prime for a very long time.
Okay. Broadhead?
Currently exploring some options. Have shot over the last few years, shot the Mega Beat, killed a bunch of deer with that. Great broadhead. Shot their Striker for a while, G5 Striker. Another good broadhead. Have constantly fought this fixed head versus mechanical head battle in my brain, and have gone back and forth like 5 times. But whitetail, I love the mechanical head. They just don't fail. Elk, I'm not as sold on their performance out there. But yeah, those are the ones I've used the most last few years.
Okay. Food, water, or cover? What's most important to you? You can only pick one.
Cover.
Your favorite habitat tool or implement?
These are not exactly rapid fire questions. I'm gonna just say a brush hog just because I use it the most, and I use it for some of my access, which I think is the most important.
All right. Last but not least of our semi-rapid fire questions. Your favorite tree. It could be something you like to plant, you like to hunt out of, you like to see driving down the road.
Maple tree. We do maple syrup. Love maples. And they're beautiful in the fall. Yeah, maple.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, you passed. And you're the first. And you're the first guy to give me crap about the rapid fire segment. So I appreciate that.
I was trying to think through. Yeah, ish.
Awesome. Well, hey, anything else, guys? Jordan, I want you to plug where people can come find your stuff and follow along. And just really appreciate you coming on, man. And yeah, keep in touch for sure.
Yeah, no problem. You can find us on YouTube, Michigan Out of Doors TV. We air every night on PBS, all the PBS stations around Michigan, Toledo, South Bend, all those. Facebook, Instagram, kind of do everything on there. So follow along there. Website, MichiganOutdoorsTV.com. We've got some some new apparel up, and we've got recipes and shows and all kinds of stuff on there. So, yep, you can find us there. And yeah, feels good to be talking about deer hunting. I was just talking to Kevin a little bit the other day, and I was like, sending trail cam pictures back and forth. I'm like, yeah, this is good. You know, I've been missing this, so it's good to do a little talking.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, hopefully we'll see you around this fall, and thanks again, and good luck this fall.
Yeah, same to you guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Habitat Podcast. We really do appreciate you guys coming back every week to get this awesome Habitat content, and we would appreciate it if you went to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us continue to grow and trend in the right direction, attract new listeners, and help us provide better content in the future. Guys, we have a website full of resources. We have a blog on the website. We have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all linked up at habitatpodcast.com. Our land plan services, merchandise, decals, hats, t-shirts, and I give away a free 5-inch decal to anyone who leaves us a review on Apple iTunes. Really appreciate it. I want to thank our partners, Downburst Cedars, Vitalize Seed Company, Morse Nursery, Packer Max Cultipackers, Stealth Outdoors, First Light, Latitude Outdoors, United Country Midwest Lifestyle Properties. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back next week with another great episode of the Habitat Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.